want the muzzle to sit flat, okay? I don't want the muzzle jumping around. I want the muzzle sitting flat. That's all this stuff. I roll this in right here. The muzzle should sit real flat. All right, that's my goal. Again, one more time. So once you start to extend here, that's what I'm looking at. Consistency. All right. So I should have a consistent hit at speed. So we're looking for keeping the muzzle sitting real flat. I want that thing reciprocating just like that.
What's happening, guys? Had a question about unsighted fire and DR Middlebrook's system of fist fire. I thought I would try to tackle that. I've been thinking about it for a few days because it's one of those things where it's almost like jiu-jitsu or boxing or one of those sports where it's best learned if I could be hands-on with somebody and walk them through the exercises. But also, I looked at it as like, that's a pretty cool challenge as a coach and as a student. How do I explain as simple as possible, but no simpler, to someone who doesn't have exposure to the system so that they could go to the range today and try it and maybe start to form an opinion on, is this worth the time it would take to learn this? Is it worth the effort? And the danger is reductionism. I'm always prone to reducing things down to 3 tenets or 3 components or the very base. I have to be careful of that. But I looked at it as, man, this is a good challenge. This is going to be interesting. DR Middlebrooks, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, if you can kind of picture that timeline, we are in the middle of, not really in the middle of, but on the tail end of the whole Weaver versus modern isosceles debate in the shooting world. And there's USPSA or IPSC versus tactical. There's this divide that it doesn't exist now. So people who weren't around back then won't understand the magnitude of this argument or discussion point back then. Back then, there were guys who were like, you're going to get people killed if you teach them to point shoot. If you teach them to trust their index and drive the pistol and make hits, you're going to get people killed. You're going to get people sued or put in prison. There were all kinds of crazy things being said. And to DR's credit, he continued to push it, and he continued to make videos with myself, himself, and others shooting plate racks with no sights on the pistol, shooting out to 100 yards with no sights on the pistol, doing all these things to say, listen, this is a viable option if something happens and you can't see the sights clearly, but you can still tell there's a threat there, or if your sights get knocked off. That it's not a frequent thing, but it is a thing that you lose a sight. How many times have we been on a range and a Glock front sight comes out because people didn't put any thread locker on the front sight threads? Same with the optic. How many times have we seen optics go flying off of pistols because people didn't read the manual, didn't apply the proper amount of torque and a thread locker? These things happen. His point was just, no pun intended, learning to point and shoot might benefit us. It's something else to put in kind of the lexicon or the whatever you want to refer to, what term you want to refer to. The toolbox is probably the oldest term, right? And yeah, you have to remember that's kind of the day, right, where we're talking about. There were no, this is pistol mounted optics milled into the slide. Let me show you real quick that we are all clear here. There's nothing in there, nothing in there, nothing in there, and there's no ammo in here. You have to remember, like, these did not exist. There were open class pistols, and there were certainly people experimenting with mounting some sort of optic mount to the frame and basically creating a open class carry pistol. There was all that kind of stuff happening. And so guys that were shooting in those classes and those divisions, they understood target focus. And there were guys like Jerry Barnhart. When I went through his course, he talked about the rear sight as a viewfinder. So the rear sight's here and the front sight's here, and you kind of are looking through the rear sight and you're looking past the front sight at the target. So you're just kind of seeing this as a reminder of where the pistol is in relation to the target, and then as needed you pull your focus back to the front sight if necessary. But for the most part, he was talking about staying, looking past all that and just seeing almost like an open gun, seeing the front sight just imposed on the target and letting her rip. There were people, most definitely there were people that were already experimenting with this. And then of course you have the combatives guys, Fairbairn and Applegate and all those guys who were advocating point shooting. And DR, the difference is in how we approached it from the fistfire side of the house. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. First things first, DR had an exercise, I'm going to try to make sure if you guys can see me here, where he would start with the thumb underneath of the dominant eye in your hand here, and he would just roll that out. He called the draw stroke or the presentation the roll out. He would roll out. See me from the side, I'm going to roll my hand. See how I'm rolling my hand over and pointing into the target? And DR's thing was, this arm is my horizontal reference or index. And this arm, my strong side arm, whether you're left-handed or right-handed, is under your dominant eye, and that's my vertical index. And so the hands would meet under the dominant eye, and I would stay there. And then you would do this exercise, which seems silly, but it pays off, where you just start with your hands here, and you just kind of roll the hand over and point the thumb into the target. And you try to keep the thumb level with the ground and your forearm level horizontally with the earth, so that as the pistol in your hand comes up and rolls into the target, the muzzle stays level to the target. Forgive me for pointing a pistol at you guys. There's nothing behind the camera, and it just wigs me out pointing guns at people that don't need to be shot. But for illustration purposes, I hope you understand this. I'm just trying. We'll get into it in a second. And then you would just, with the pistol in your hand, no right hand on the gun yet, you would just roll up and out. And so you would get used to that, just keeping the pistol flat, so that from here to full extension, I could make hits on the target, right? Because again, if we look at just a plain piece of paper, that target zone is basically right there, right? We all know what that means. Again, that was the first exercise. You would start with your hands empty and you would just roll up, and he called that the roll out. The roll out, and your thumb is driving into a point on the target where you want to hit. With an IDPA target or a USPSA target, either the zero down, where it says -0 on the IDPA target, or the A on the A zone of the USPSA target, you would just intensely focus on that, and then just work on keeping your thumb and your arm, your forearm, level with the ground, and just push straight into that with your thumb. It's a really interesting exercise. Think about all the things we do with our hands, where we touch stuff with our thumb, a doorbell, a elevator button, all these things. We just look at it and touch it. We don't need a sighting system, and I know it's arm's length and all that good stuff, but that's basically roughly what we're doing. That was the exercise, right? Then you put the gun in your hand and you do it with your offhand with no right hand on the gun. Now, with the right hand on the pistol, you bring the pistol underneath of the dominant eye. So my muzzle and my dominant eye should be under each other. And DR's reasoning for that was, we're going to get there anyway, right? Rather than come out here and try to get underneath my dominant eye, why not just start there? People will tell you your hand clap position and join your hands in the middle and all these other things. And DR's like, but when you slow them down and you look, where's the pistol end up? Under the dominant eye. Whether they're right eye dominant or left eye dominant, the pistol ends up under the dominant eye. Why not start there? Will that fraction of a second save me in a fight? I don't know. But I don't want to find out that you know what I mean? Like, not to be too silly about it, but I don't want to end up in, hopefully, heaven and look at a replay and be like, oh man, that 1/100th of a second I needed. He would start you here under the dominant eye, forearm level, index with the ground. So you have your horizontal index and you have your vertical index, right here under the dominant eye, and you would just practice rolling out and not looking at the sights, but looking at the target, and now pushing with the thumb, and I'm rolling my thumb into the target. So I'm just rolling my thumb into the target. So if my target's over here, see how my thumb is just staying level, and I'm just rolling into the target. That was it basically. Now, we would do that probably a couple hundred reps of just rolling out and verifying at the extension. We would stop looking at the target, look at the sights, verify I'm on it, roll it back in. We would do that over and over again. And then what we would do is we would go ahead and load up a mag, and you would bring the pistol to what he called the guard, which is back here, this compressed space. The target's about 3 yards away, and you would point your thumb, you would look intently at the A or at the -0, point your thumb straight into that, and then press the trigger. And then you would assess, let the trigger out, you're looking at the target, and then just kind of move your thumb or whatever you needed to do to kind of get it dialed in. And then you just would repeat that over and over again, where you would just you would just start in guard. Another thing that we would do, so if somebody struggles with that and they're having a hard time, start at full extension. So you roll out, point your thumb into the target, roll out, look at it, make sure the sights, verify the sights are on the A or on the 0, and then you just compress back in, keeping your thumb pointed straight at that, looking intently at the A or at the 0, your thumb pointing directly at it, and then press the trigger. Most of the time, that would fix it.
All right, so the first thing I want us to do, so coaches, you're just going to watch them first time through. Get everything set, and then allow the arms to come back so that the gun stays under your dominant eye. So the gun should not drift over to the center, none of that stuff. My dominant eye is the reference point for the vertical alignment, as well as the target. Make sense? Yeah. So horizontal is this, vertical is this. All right, it's staying underneath my dominant eye the whole time. Make sense? So your coach, you're going to come out here, lock everything down, and then I just want you to collapse it back in, fire off a round. Okay? All right.
We would do that for 100, 200 rounds just to get that dialed in. Then once we had that dialed in, where we're shooting from the guard and we're making good hits, we got like a fist-sized group. Again, 3 to 5 yards. Not expecting miracles the first time out. I'm just expecting to get on the paper and have a good group, like a fist-sized group. Then what we would do is we would start to extend a little. Just extend just a little bit. Again, this is going to be based on proximity to the threat, right? If my threat is within arm's length, I'm probably not going to want to be extended arms, right? If my threat is 3 to 5 yards, do I want to extend my arms? I don't know. I personally do not want to extend my arms. I know how fast I can cover 5 yards, and it's under a second, even now. At 57 years old, most people, I would imagine, can cover 5 yards, especially life or death, in a second or less, which is about draw stroke time for most folks. Coming out of the holster and here would probably be your best bet, and not just floating it out into space. Same for if you're already holding somebody at gunpoint. Would it be better to hold back here where it's hard for them to get to it, where you can also turn, you can use your elbows, you can fend, you can do all these things, as opposed to out here where now we're going to be fighting over the pistol. Lots of pros and cons, things for you guys to think about. I'm not telling you the way, I'm telling you a way. The things that I think about when I coach folks, and the questions I present to my students to begin their thought process, because I don't want to tell them, I want them to discover. That's a big piece of the learning journey. That's it, folks. Start here, get your hits. Start here, actually. Empty hand, get your hits, and then practice rolling out, and then eventually you're going to want to just keep pressing the trigger all the way out and all the way back, and your round should stay. There's going to be a little vertical string because you're going up and down, but the round should stay left to right in that center on that piece of duct tape, and about like that. Try it out. Let me know what you think, man. I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys and your thoughts on this. Have a good one.